Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. My good buddy and co-host Michael Wann is here with me, and this is Project Kids, episode number 21. Michael, all of our shows are now in adulthood. Welcome. How are you?
I am doing well. We were just recording before, or we were talking before we were recording. We're talking about some really good stuff. So let's just jump right in. Finish where you talk about what you were just talking about, because we're going to just no niceties today. Just like hard-hitting, ridiculous talk.
All right. So Michael and I were going over a few things, and the things we were mostly talking about were, by the way, does my microphone sound okay? It's a brand new microphone. Sound good?
It sounds like you could maybe turn down the volume just a little bit because and it would be great.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So
ASMR, is that what that is?
Yeah. I like that. Okay. So we were talking a little bit about this Alec Baldwin case and also about this ridiculous puppy story that is horrifying, but what it really is there for. But we decided we moved back to the Alec Baldwin thing. And Danny had sent me like an article this morning, and Michael had also read it, that was sort of basically saying that this is a cover up, that Alec Baldwin has been arrested for first-degree murder and for possession of child pornography, and that there's been a media blackout ordered, right? And so we chatted about that a little bit, and then I said, Michael, in a separate context, brought up the Jeffrey Epstein. And I said, well, I wonder where Jeffrey Epstein's ranch was in New Mexico. I wonder where in proximity this movie set was in comparison to Jeffrey Epstein's ranch. And then what is really going on here? So Michael's like, ooh, and Laura's like, let's record. So here we go, Michael, take it away.
So, I mean, I'm just looking right now. We're like, we're just like kind of, I think they call it spitballing. Is that what they call it? So right here is the Epstein ranch. And we see that it's
which one is the Epstein, the Zorro or the Bonanza?
Zorro.
Okay.
Zorro Ranch is, it's 20 miles away.
Okay, it's interesting, right where the other ranch is, for you, there was a thing there and it went away. It said La Cienega. Did you see that? La Cienega. Just so people, like, La Cienega is like a major street in Los Angeles where a lot of like Hollywood activity and agency kind of stuff actually takes place. So that's interesting that there's a La Cienega right there. All right, so that's kind of interesting just to begin with. So we have Zorro Ranch and we have Bonanza Creek Ranch. All right. And, my first thought when this happened, we were talking about this in the Project Kids group a little bit last Friday, was like, this felt like some kind of setup to me, right? Like it was like a killing two birds with one stone. Somebody wanted to take both the cinematographer out and basically take Alec Baldwin out, right? Like obviously Alec Baldwin is not dead, but he has a major problem on his hands now. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that shape on the ground there.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And like this has like, look at this coloring. What is that? Is that like a blue?
Maybe the whole earth is inside of there. That looks like earth.
That looks kind of like what they show us what the earth looks like.
Yep. And you know what else that looks like? So I did a whole little thing in the Project Kids group yesterday about that shape, about with the 4 entrance points in the circle. We were looking at those. We were looking at other iterations of those. So it is fascinating that this is what you pull up, because
like I did a whole thing about baseball diamonds being a yantra. This is very yantra-esque with like 4 gateways into it.
Yep.
So I'm assuming this is the Epstein Ranch. Like this is where Zorro Ranch Road is right here, and we've got this like kind of situation.
Laura's going to show her yantra so everyone can see what we mean in terms of yantras. So that's one iteration of a yantra. Yeah.
And then there's this blue right here.
Right. I think that building is the building that they always show when you see a picture of his ranch. It's like some weird looking like temple, or like what are the things that the Muslims call their little temples? They call them Indians ashram. It's like some kind of little ashram or temple or mosque or something like that. We always see that one when you see a picture of the ranch.
And it's the same color. That blue looks very similar to the I don't think I knew that there was one on, I did not know that there was one of those for his ranch, but this is like, that temple on the island in the Virgin Islands.
I was thinking the same thing.
Blue.
Yep. I was thinking about the same thing.
So like this blue, the way it's popping out, I don't know what that is. I haven't seen Epstein Blue Temple Ranch, New Mexico. Let's see if that hits anything. So yeah, like that. This is, there's that. That's what we saw right there. Like, I mean, that's not necessarily a secret, I suppose, that shape. But
I could be confusing that temple because I know about the temple on the Virgin Islands. I maybe thought that there was one in New Mexico too, and there wasn't. I actually think now that I see it, what that blue thing is, because I can see it from a couple different angles.
Pool?
It looks like a rooftop pool that has something in the middle of the pool, which is fascinating because yesterday when we were looking at these shapes that are similar to that in the group, we were also looking at bodies of water that had islands of grass in the middle. And that's almost what that looks like in the pool, that there's some sort of planter in the middle of the pool.
Yeah.
There's something in the middle of the pool that looks like it has like plants in it or something.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go see what,
let's go check out Bonanza Ranch. That's where the movie was being shot.
So they got this little town right there. Let's see. What will they let me look at? They won't let me look at anything.
You know what this reminds me of?
Spahn Ranch.
Spahn Ranch.
Of course
it does. It. Yeah.
What else would it be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not really showing us too much. I was looking at like the
my guess would be that they've taken efforts in the last 30, 48, 72 hours to obscure some
I would imagine exactly before anything happened.
Before the autists start tearing it apart.
Yeah. What are these? Oh, that's probably you're seeing some of the stone face. So I don't really have anything on that right now, but like maybe we'll come back to that. But that's it definitely, considering the last time we spoke, we were talking a lot about Breaking Bad and New Mexico in general. Like this is Santa Fe, so I guess I don't know how far away Santa Fe is from Albuquerque, but it's relatively close. I mean, I would imagine.
All right, so I'll mention a few things about how New Mexico has been coming up in my reality lately, other than this activity, obviously, and the conversation you and I had last week. So a lot of people from our community, and some of them are shared followers of mine and yours and ours and whatnot. It seems to be a hot place that a lot of people are relocating to, even though the laws there, like the tyranny there is pretty high. People are, for some reason, choosing that as a place to relocate to. And my guess would be the main reason being because in most areas, land is reasonably cheap. A lot of the land has access to well water, or it's close to rivers or things like that. And the state is so poor and parts of it are so remote that even if there is tyranny, it's hard to enforce, right? So my guess would be that might be why. And then also, it's beautiful there. It's beautiful. But so that, and then the other day, like Danny had been watching one of our episodes about the QR codes, and Danny will be joining us for the Glass Bead game next week. So I'm not going to go too far into this, but I'm just going to sort of throw the line out a little bit. And that she had said that she, when she listens to me explain the QR codes and the buildings and the downtown city blocks and all of that kind of stuff and the zoning, she had the clarity that maybe that's the reason she has always preferred or liked best living in Santa Fe. There are no big buildings in Santa Fe, right? So there's literally not much QR code, right? Not that you can't do it on short buildings, but it doesn't create that same sort of, it's just different. When you don't have high buildings, it doesn't raise energy up. It doesn't collect the same kind of thing. And that, so living in Santa Fe is probably the closest thing that you can do to living at the near a cultural center without the quote unquote trappings of a big city. There are no, I think the tallest building in Santa Fe, if I recall correctly, there's a hotel right off the square downtown that I think is maybe 6 or 7 stories high, because I've been to the rooftop bar before, right? I think that's the highest building in all of Santa Fe. And there's, a bunch of culture and art and stuff like that there. And, a lot of wealthy people have their homes or the vacation homes there, but there are no skyscrapers. There are no big corporate headquarters, at least not like, right in Santa Fe kind of proper. Maybe there are in some surrounding areas, but the city and Santa Fe is a capital, right? Santa Fe is a capital, and most other capital cities do have some degree of like urban sprawl about them, right? Like or urban downtown, big buildings, at least, a few banks are headquartered there generally, or insurance companies, something like that. You don't really have that in Santa Fe. So there is something different about that space. And then also, there's to get to like some of the crux of this story, there's obviously a huge issue with trafficking and abuse of indigenous women and children. And, New Mexico, as my guess would be, is a prime spot for that.
Definitely. I'm looking into like all of those places. So, all right. Do we have anywhere deeper to go with this?
I mean, I think that we're probably going to talk about some of this with Dani.
With Dani. So we'll couch it
with Dani next week. But because I did not expect you to find that shape, I do want to show you what I was looking at with the people in the group yesterday.
Okay, please.
And I did leave those windows open. So let me see if I can find them now. Let's see. All right. So this is, all right. In the first place that did I take it away? I think I took, oh, here it is. All right. So the first thing is in the group, Myra showed me this place near where she lives called the Flagler. It's called the Flagler. It's a college, right? And I noticed the shape, I think, on the grounds of this college. Let me see if I can find the picture that I was looking at when I discovered this shape. But it's wonderfully interesting inside of the building, so she's going to go over there and check and see if it's legit or if it's a Potemkin village like the capital in Des Moines, right? Let me find, there was one picture of the grounds, though, that started me on the quest for this shape. Let me see if I can find that picture of the grounds. And the answer is I don't seem to be able to find that picture of the grounds right now. So then we went, but I saw the picture of the, let me find it. Let me try one more time because it's important to the story. Let's see. No, that's not going to be it. That's not going to be it. Where is this one picture? Oh, here it is right there. Okay. See it?
Yes.
Okay. So then that made me remember that when I had talked about in a show I did with Nish, I talked about this Lucia light session I went to where I saw this symbol in my head. And Nish had started talking about Tracy's writing partner, Nick DeBeer, right? In his book, the Nick DeBeer in his book, The Dragon Legacy. And look, that symbol is there. This was the exact symbol I kept seeing everywhere when I did this Lucia light session, which is like where they shine white light on your third eye, right? So I saw this and it was, when I saw this, it reminded me of that, right? Very similar.
Yeah.
There we go. And then it also reminded me of something I'd seen once in a Carl Jung piece of art, right? This was a Carl Jung piece of art. Look at that, right? And then it also reminded me of Walter Russell's Machine. And this is the cover of his, The Secret of Light book, right? And this is the way he sees sort of the machine that the earth is, right? So look at what we have here. And so then there was also, we went and looked at this Biltmore in North Carolina, and we were able to find something that was like the inverse of it there. It was harder to find here, so I'm not going to be able to find it right now. But just within minutes, all of these things popped to my mind. When I saw that, I'm like, whoa, the Nick DeBeer book, the Carl Jung painting, the Walter Russell book. Like these things had been memories in my mind.
Seeing it again. Will you go back to that, to the tab of the Biltmore?
Yeah.
What does that say? Exploring the secrets behind the hidden doors of the historic Biltmore. What is that picture?
So that picture is inside this atrium right here of people way back long ago having a dinner around one of these portals of water in the center of the atrium with some kind of statue that is weird. But this looks like it has to be from 100 or more years ago.
Yeah.
right? What's interesting is there's a very, very similar atrium in the Flagler, right? When we looked at some of these, there was a couple of atriums in the Flagler building, but there was one that looked almost exactly like it, right? So let me go to a more ground level view of it. But like it was crazy how so we got into another conversation about how if you go to a room that looks like the other rooms, can you move between the rooms, right? So could you move from the Flagler to the Biltmore, right? Like just kind of thing, right? If there's enough symmetry, because think about how a lot of the capitals have these domes and then these atriums kind of underneath them, right? That if these are some type of portals, so it's this room basically. It's like the ground in this room, and that's the fountain in the middle, right? So what we found in a lot of these circle shapes everywhere, right, that they have a body of water in the middle. It's either like there's either grass with a body of water in the middle, or there's a body of water with grass in the middle, with some sort of island of grass. Right. So sometimes you see something that's the inverse of the others. So anyway, but that shape is right there. So now let's just go back and look at your picture of the ranch with that shape.
You want me to pull that back up?
Pull that back up.
Let me see if I could find it. Where was I may have taken that away.
All right. Well, everybody who wants to see it can roll back into the episode and see sort of the similarities, So I'm just going to send a pic from my phone to my email so I can show you one more thing. So there we go. See it?
There we go.
Okay. So then right after, so we have this, like he felt the need to put that same design where he lives that are at all of these interesting places that we have pointed out and looked at, and that all of our sort of like a lot of our esoteric intellectual informers about how things really work include in their work and their art and their designs and the way that they discuss how the world really works, right? So I had this conversation with the group yesterday, and right when the group was done, I walked, there's a post office about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile from our office. And so I decided to walk over there because I needed to send a package to I had bought a little present for my newborn niece, right? And so I was sending the package over there. Let me just find this picture. And right next in the building next to the post office, right, there was this. Let me show you. All right, let me get it open, and now I can screen share. And this, I just saw this right on the way over to the post office. So it was the building right next to the post office.
Huh.
Right. Like, it's just, how could it be that I see this right after the conversation about that? And the name of the business is Lazarus. Maybe we should I wonder what Lazarus is. Let's look up Lazarus.
Lazarus rose from the dead. He was called forth out of the tomb.
Okay, so Laura says Lazarus. Can you speak louder so people can hear you? Can speak into the microphone.
Well, if I'm remembering my Bible story right, Lazarus was called forth from the dead. He was Jesus came. He had sisters Mary and Martha, I think, and they were asking Jesus to come and help their brother Lazarus so he wouldn't die, but Jesus delayed, and Lazarus died. And 3 days later, Jesus showed up and called Lazarus forth from the grave, said, come forth or whatever. And he was resurrected and came alive. And so it's kind of like a preemptive thing or about Jesus' resurrection.
So Lazarus is resurrection.
Resurrection.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me see what I see when I look up Lazarus right now. All right. So let's just see if there's any Wikipedia. So is this Lazarus of Bethany? All right, let's just look up. So I guess it's considered Lazarus. Oh, there's also, of course, Michael, we'll find the synchromysticism here. So I guess
what do we got?
All right. So I'm going to show you what I saw when I looked up, but there's a bunch of Lazarus people. There's Lazarus of Bethany, right? Lazarus of Persia. That would be interesting in relationship to what Nick DeVere's shape shows and what I found out about Persian dragon society kind of stuff. Lazarus of Ai, Lazarus of a bishop of Milan. There's a rapper named Lazarus. And then there's a Malawian musician that goes by the name Lazarus. There's the Order of St. Lazarus, right, which is a Catholic military order. And there's the Order of St. Lazarus, which is a Christian honorific order in Paris. There is Lazarus Pit in the DC comic universe. Lazarus Missions is the name of the company in the film Interstellar, right? There's an Australian religious film. And then there's another film called The Lazarus Effect. There's a video game called Project Lazarus. And there's a video game called Ultima versus Lazarus. Music, The Lazarus Band. There's many albums, including one by Schubert, the famous Franz Schubert, named Lazarus. There's lots of songs named Lazarus, including a song by David Bowie. A song by a group called Chimera, like Chimeric almost, Chimera. There is also, let's see if there's anything. There's a song by someone from an album called We're All Alone in This Together. It looks like it came out during the time of COVID. There's a Smallville episode named Lazarus, an X-Files episode named Lazarus, an episode of A Designated Survivor, and an episode of Shameless, all titled Lazarus. And there's a department store. The one that I had popped up was, there's a software called Lazarus, and I'm going to show you the emblem for that in a second. There's Lazarus Effect in semiconductor physics. There's a Lazarus Group, which is a cybercrime group. There's Lazarus Island in Singapore, right? There's something called the Lazarus Sign, which is a reflex movement in brain dead or brainstem failure patients. There's a Lazarus taxon that disappears for one or more periods from the fossil record. And there's something called Team Lazarus, which is an Italian motor racing team, which is interesting because motor racing is in the news based on Let's Go Brandon, right? But look at this sign for this Lazarus software. Check this out. This was the thing that popped up almost immediately on the side of my screen. Look at this. Symbolism. Lazarus is a free cross-platform visual integrated development environment for rapid application and development using the free Pascal compiler. Its goal is to provide an easy-to-use development environment for programmers developing with the Object Pascal language, which is as close as possible to Delphi. Well, that sure sounds like some MK Ultra programming right there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Huh. All right, so it's interesting. It would be interesting to, I would wonder, I'm curious if there's a Project Lazarus, right? That besides, like we saw that there was a Project Lazarus on the, that was one of the things down here. But whenever there's a David Bowie song with the same name, that really piques my interest. But there was something called, there's this Lazarus Pit in the DC there is a Project Lazarus. Project Lazarus is a big Finnish productions our story, Project Lazarus model is a public health model based on the twin premise that overdose deaths are preventable and that all communities are responsible for their own health. That's interesting because Santa Fe has one of the biggest problems with drugs and overdose. There's also in here this Lazarus Pit in the DC Comics universe.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see if I can, when I click on it, it just goes to the DC comic. It's not, what did Laura find? Okay, here she found something called Project Lazarus Zombies. Zombies is a cooperative shooter survival game created by Logitech and inspired by Call of Duty Zombies. The game is successor to his previous zombie game called The Call of Robloxia. The objective of the game is to survive against endless waves of zombies in post-apocalyptic maps. So reference to maps here as well. So I think we're dealing with something a lot more complicated than the story we're being told here.
Yes. Let me, how do you, I'm just going to throw this out. I'm curious what your thoughts were, your initial thought. Just by your gut, how did the Russians connect to this?
How How do the Russians connect to this?
And if you don't have anything like, you know, that, because I'm going to go somewhere with this. So I'm just curious before I go open up where I'm going to go with this.
So like initially, like that wouldn't have been where I would gone, but I will say this. I do think there is deep asymmetrical, unconventional warfare going on between the United States and Russia. That is what the Russiagate bullshit is a cover for. And we saw an example of that during the Olympics with the Simone Biles thing and the stuff that I showed about the Russian connection to that, right? Like, so that wouldn't surprise me if we're there on this level too. So take it away.
Well, I mean, as I was still kind of like hooked on the Baldwin Epstein connection. Like I didn't even prior to this conversation, I did not place the Epstein Ranch at the same location as this Bonanza Ranch, being both in Santa Fe. And so, you know, we're talking about it, just like, I don't even know how we brought up Epstein, but it came up. So I did a quick search on, I did a quick search on Baldwin and Epstein. And like the first thing I found was this, what is the date? Do they even have the date? So this is August 12th, 2019, like when the Epstein, but Alec Baldwin jumps on the conspiracy theory bandwagon, suggesting that billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was killed by Russians. And like, here's his tweet where he said that. And so what, so like, so let's go along with the character of Alec Baldwin. Like anyone who's a celebrity, in my opinion, I first look at the entire presentation of who the celebrity is that they're a character. They're a crafted character. Like maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I think that's my first sort of look. And so I don't think, you know, Alec Baldwin tries to be, at least in some appearances, the character of Alec Baldwin tries to take himself seriously, talking about like important issues and so forth. So there's a degree of seriousness to come out with anything that's going to come out of his mouth, this character's mouth. And then we see that this tweet is tied into the Hillary and Alec Baldwin Foundation. So this is an official statement, if you will, however official you can go and say the Twitter feed would be from a foundation. But like, you know, this would be like, you know, as significant as you can or as official as you can. And it's Alec Baldwin saying the Russians killed Epstein. And it's been a while since I thought about like the whole sort of Epstein storyline as it was presented, but I don't really recall the Russian angle being like having much weight to it, you know, regardless if it's true or not. That was not like, you know, that did not carry a lot of the conjecture. But when you go then and you put in, you know, we're going to go and cross-reference, we think of like, you know, who is this woman who was shot, this Halyna Hutchins. Well, she is, where'd that go?
She's Russian.
She's fucking Russian.
She's a Ukrainian, which is different, but yes, okay.
Yeah, it's like from my simplistic mind, I'm going to say that's closer to Russian than further away from Russian.
Right.
And so, and like particularly when you put in context of everything else, right? You know, like,
and she grew up in Russia. She grew up in the Russian city of Murmansk. Okay.
So we've got all that, and if anything else, like what does it say right here? She grew up in on a Soviet military base.
You got it.
Like, you know, there. You mentioned now, like, you know, the whole thing with like going on with like the Hunter Biden and like the Ukrainian, like whatever the hell that is, like, that's so like, I had personally become so like logged down by all those details. I just stopped paying attention to that. Like it like, you know, they bored me to death.
It's boring. Yeah.
They bored me to death, but it keeps coming up. And so like, I don't know, like, you know, where this kind of ties into it, but you know, there's a link right there.
Well, I do.
Tell me. That's why I asked you. I'm like, bring me into Russia.
So I have been trying for a couple of days now to figure out why Laura made me watch this ridiculous movie. The other night on the Disney. You might be able to watch it because I think you have Disney for the girls, because I know you've told me to look at things on Disney before, right? It's called Black Widow.
Black Widow?
Black Widow.
Is it an animated feature?
No. Is that a Marvel Comics? It's a Marvel Comics thing. right?
It has
Charlotte Johansson, and then
Okay,
it
I
has
heard about
Scarlett.
this. Yeah, I know. I think I know what you're
yeah,
talking
Scarlett
about.
Johansson, and then David Harbour from Stranger Things. Okay, and I'm not. I want you to watch it, so I'm not going to give too much of it away. But
You give
essentially,
it away. I like to know it beforehand, so I know what I'm looking for.
so the family is a Potemkin village. Laura loves when I say, but the family is a fake family made up of 2 Russian parents and 2 Russian children that were not in any way related, but they're positioned in the United States as a family to infiltrate and do, Soviet Russian kind of stuff in the United States. And the story follows how that fake family was then broken up and the girls were taken out of the United States and back to Russia and put through basically mind-controlled assassin training. Okay. And they went on to be 2 of the best sort of spies, assassins the world has ever known, right? But these are really hot, young, beautiful women who've been in. One is like really definitely playing the role of the assassin, and then the other sort of returns to America and does good things that Americans do, the Avengers kind of stuff, right? But they're all posed and infiltrated into society in positions like, I don't know, maybe a cinematographer on a on a movie set or something like that. When I saw that she grew up on a Soviet military base in the Arctic, right? Like look what it said there. Go back to her page.
Find that. All right, where is it? All right, let me pull that back up. Share screen. There we go.
Okay, look, she grew up on a Soviet military base, right, in the Arctic, where her father served in the Soviet Navy, and she called herself an army brat. I'm telling you, go watch the movie, and I think this is what we're dealing with.
So let's go. Let's also tie this in. So, what's his name? Hopper. It was the Hopper character from Stranger Things.
Yes,
that's a subplot. The whole Russian
subplot.
So, I just saw there's just the 30-second glance of the plot structure on Black Widow. So they are a spy family in Ohio. Stranger Things takes place in Indiana. I apologize to the Midwestern folks, but in my mind, there's no difference between Indiana and Ohio. Like it's the same. Like in the general way, like Ukraine and Russia, like, yeah, they're different, like, but they're more similar than less similar. And so we're seeing this play out, like what this is playing out. I think it's part of the game. Like, I mean, I go back to the timing of the quote, whoever the CIA director was, who's like, our disinformation campaign is complete when no one knows what's true or false.
Correct.
And that came out at the same time as like the Russian defectors started going on all those shows, like saying like, this is how we've gone and
right. Yuri Besmenov. Yeah,
exactly. Was that Yuri Besmenov? And
yeah.
The whole thing to me, as I watched that, I'm like, this is like,
it's all made up. It's all made up.
This is part of the operation. Him telling you that, and all of those interviews, like, I don't even think they're real interviews. They're all like, these like local cable stations from like the 80s, which just like show up like, in time of the internet. But like, if you look at like the structuring of false reality,
right.
And primarily like, we're going to focus on the Cold War ages. Like, those were the 2 primary players, the United States and the Soviet Union. And like, they've always, whatever and whomever they are, like, whether they're like Nazi infiltrated Project Paperclip folks or whatever you want to go and say, they're linked. And we can see they're playing both sides of this like one level of game, like, the false reality. No one knows what's real and what's not real. And then also like all these other stories. There's something to this. How close are we to Roswell? How close is Santa Fe to Roswell? I mean, it's in the same state. It's got to be somewhat close.
Okay, hold on. So hold on real quick with what you're saying there. So the Yuri Besmenov stuff is interesting because it's the best type of propaganda, right? The propaganda that's the truth, but wielded in a way where he's actually doing what he's saying he's warning
exactly,
about.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
What all MK Ultra, in my opinion, has been, because when you read MK Ultra, you're like, oh, fuck, I've been MK Ultra.
Right.
It's not, like, as soon as it gets in your head, like, it starts to mess with you.
Right. So, but the other thing is in this movie, just in very brief clips, right, when they're showing how they mind controlled these girls, there are little snippets of gymnastics, right? And so Simone Biles, she's part of the whole Larry Nassar sexual thing, pedophilia kind of case, right? And the whole, like it relates to the sort of Epstein stuff, right? And so the Russians basically, a few months before the Olympics, remove Simone Biles and will easily win, right? They go on, they win the Olympics. But what a lot of people don't know that's been sort of remarked about is when this whole thing was going on with the Larry Nassar stuff, the Russians were like, we don't have these kinds of problems in our gymnastics community or in our country or whatever, right? They're denying that there's a pedophilia problem there. And when you watch the this Black Widow movie, right? Like that's not, they use a different tactic for doing the mind control kind of thing, right? Like the sexual abuse is very much part of the American style of doing this, but I think the Soviets do something that is just far more like generally physically brutal as opposed to sort of a sexual thing, right?
Kind of like Fauci.
Right, type of thing. So, but this stuff all wraps in, right? Like, and so like the Soviet, like part of their sort of military or space that they look for people to pull from as assassins would be the gymnastics training. Remember, they used to have these incredible sort of training centers and whatnot. So that stuff is all sort of shown in this movie. And if you go back to that episode we did with Jeff that morning that the thing happened with Simone Biles, we were talking about a lot of this kind of stuff, right? But I mean, we hear endlessly about how the Chinese have infiltrated Hollywood and our entertainment system. You don't hear about how the Russians have done it right now. But if you go back into like the 50s, right, in Hollywood, there was the talk of the communist infiltration. And they weren't talking about the Chinese communist infiltration in the 40s or the 50s. They were talking about it more as Soviet style and coming through Jews, right? In fact, our favorite character from my family, William Crissell, his father was part of that. He went from working in the War Department in Asia and whatnot to coming and working in Hollywood after that for United Artists, right? And so I think Soviet infiltration of these kinds of setups has been probably very common, and we haven't been, but that's not where our attention has been directed. Right. And so like, and when they do acknowledge that we have a Russian problem, maybe they give us the fake one, right? They give us the dumb fucking Russiagate shit and blah, 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 blah. Right. They never talk about any of this like much more deep sort of shadow side infiltration. Right. But that was not what I expected when we went to look at, I hadn't looked at her yet, the Hutchins lady. Like when I look at pictures of her, for some reason, it reminds me of Helena Bonham Carter, right? She looks a little bit like she has that same sort of look as Helena Bonham Carter does. And we've talked about Helena Bonham Carter here before. But the fact that she's Russian and that she is like literally a Soviet military brat, I think that, I mean, and think about this, like Hillary Clinton was part of like the main pusher of the Russiagate story, right? So like wanting to get people to be against Russia, but not really telling them exactly why she's against Russia. She's against Russia because of this stuff, right? They're at like deep, asymmetrical, unconventional warfare levels with like, whatever factions of the American versus the whatever factions of the Russian kind of thing. So she's trying to build anti-Russia sentiment to protect her own ass, but doing it with the stupid ass story. Like this is really more of what's going on. I didn't know there was the Hillary and Alec Baldwin Foundation. That is fascinating.
I didn't know that either. And like, we're there's a lot to this. Like, I feel like I want to go deeper on it, like looking at these sort of things. There's a lot of strange things going on.
You know what else? Remember, one of the things that Alec Baldwin is most famous for in the alternative media circles is Hulu, right? The Hulu commercials.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So do you remember that couple? So Randy interviewed them. They were around for a couple of years and then gone. Their name were John and Bonnie Mitchell. And they went on and on and on about the Hulu and mnemonic circles and sigil magic. Do you remember that?
I know the Hulu story, but I don't remember them. So like maybe I.
Okay. So they were this couple that like they would talk about how Hulu was introducing frequencies as well as mnemonic circles and sigil magic, but you could also identify these things in like Alex Jones show and right? It's interesting. A lot of the people that we're mentioning today are texting me furiously while we're talking here right now. It's interesting. We're drawing some energy here. So they talked about this thing called mnemonic circles, right? And I'm going to see if the mnemonic circles look anything like the ground we were showing.
Yeah, show me what a
All right,
mnemonic circle
so
is.
I remember.
I know what you're talking about.
I remember the video they showed. I can't find. I'm trying to look for a still image. Okay, like I'm trying to look, and there was something about the way these circles affect your brain, and they showed a very clear one from like an advertisement for the Alex Jones show for during that period of time. Right. And they were showing how it was sort of evidence that like that same mind control is being used on us. Okay. I cannot find, it's funny. I can't find, let me see if I can find John.
Is it kind of like an animated moving circle?
Yes.
Like it's a graphic.
Yes. John and Bonnie Mitchell.
Doing like following a lot of people's research into it about
Here
how these graphics are used all the times in the beginning of local news programs.
Here we go. John and Bonnie Mitchell. Here's the graphic from when they were on Higher Side someone's show. See the graphic here?
Yeah, can you expand it?
Yeah, and when you see it on the shows, these circles like they move. Like one part of the circle moves one way, another part moves another way, right? And look, here we have our same shape. Look at that. That we were looking at on the other places that I showed you, and that's on the ranch there in New Mexico. Hey guys, sorry about that. I had a very strange technical difficulty that happened at a very strange moment. Anyway, we were on this page where we were looking at the John and Bonnie Mitchell stuff right here, right? So we were looking at this stuff, and I had just come to this form of a mnemonic circle here, which looks remarkably like what we saw on the ground. And then I started thinking that the symbol for New Mexico is the Zia, right? And it looks like that. And look at some of these grids. So there's a variety of different ways that you can use these signs and symbols, right? But this is the state symbol of New Mexico is the Zia. And then I found this interesting cropping pattern. Look at this, right? Zia garden and cropping pattern. That looks almost exactly like what he has there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But look at this symbol in the middle. Looks exactly like some of the symbols related to with the pedophilia stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I went back and I was like, can I find anything more just on mnemonic circles or John and Bonnie Mitchell? The internet has been virtually scrubbed. They had tons of stuff before. I've like, there is this video still available from Veritas, right? And this is the synopsis of the show. Like this was back in 2013 or 2015 or something. Together, John and Randy had interviewed them. Randy was the first person to interview them, like back in like 2013. Together, John and Bonnie Mitchell run awakenvideo.org, an anthology of videos meant to awaken unity consciousness and bring truth to light. Blah, blah, blah. In 2013, John and Bonnie revealed a new high-tech form of subconscious mind control and digital dark magic on television and mass media involving deep programming and demonic possession. This technology is now being used against all people who watch television, mainstream movies, play video games, use cell phones and computers. This is a culmination of the Illuminati mind control and behavioral research programs, the easiest way to hypnotize and program a human being's subconscious mind. It combines electromagnetic pulsing, manipulation of sound and light frequencies, hypnotic trance induction, brainwave entrainment, and dark sigil magic. This tool is being used to keep the majority of people in a constant trance state, rewrite memories, control behavior, and insert demonic energy. TV viewers are being used as batteries to manifest the dark fear-based reality the Illuminati desire. Their initial 2013 documentary on mind control technology is called Global Epidemic, right? Which is funny because we're in some sort of like pandemic right now or whatever, epidemic exposed. Television Sigil Magic. And then the 2015 documentary that they did for the Free Your Mind conference was the Mnemonic Mind Control and Who Owns Your Thoughts. But what's interesting is how similar the mnemonic circles are to this, which is the state symbol of New Mexico, and which also looks like these other things that I've been showing, which is the grounds at the Flagler, right? We saw the grounds at the Flagler. Let me just find that exact one again. The grounds at the Flagler, the cover of Nick DeVere's book about the Dragon Legacy, right? Which goes into some of the stuff that I might want to talk about later, or might put off till next week. To the Carl Jung's artwork, right, and to Walter Russell's machine, why are these all the same mnemonic circles?
Yeah.
Right. So I did that. And then I also, so this is kind of, I looked into something else a little bit while we were gone as well, but those were the main things that I wanted to show you about that. And then that's all right there on Jeffrey Epstein's ranch. Right. And of course, like the thing that happened on the Bonanza Ranch was like a movie set. So it's related to media. Right. But those things also look a lot like crop circles. Right. And of course, there's always the ever present question of what exactly the crop circles are. Right. But it would be interesting if those were sort of a larger representation of mnemonic circle, mind controlling, or energy field. Right. I don't know what all of this means, but it's unclear to me why we're seeing all of these same symbols and all of the things that we've been looking at for the last 2 days, even though the things are not related. Supposedly.
So go on a little bit more about the Hulu connection to mind control, and then Alec Baldwin as their spokesperson.
Okay. So when they came out, I think Randy was the first person to interview John and Bonnie Mitchell. It was the first place I ever heard them. And then they made it around you heard them on a lot of shows, and then they were gone for a long time. They seemed to disappear. And then they popped up again very briefly shortly. And they were talking about how Hulu this is all just from memory, right? So if I have some of the details wrong, I'm not doing that intentionally. It's just, I listened to this show from them probably 8 or 10 years ago. So this is just from memory. Remember where I was laying when I listened to it, right? So the patent from the whatever technology, digital technology it is that Hulu uses, revealed that they were using some form of this mnemonic sort of circling sigil magic kind of stuff that was like baked into the transmission algorithm kind of thing, right? And remember that original, let's see if we can find the original Alec Baldwin
2009
commercial, right? I think the thing with Randy and John and Bonnie Mitchell was
2013.
2000. That was the when they were on these other shows. Randy had them first in like maybe 11 or 12.
All right. So the Hulu commercials came out in 2009. I don't remember when like the whole Hulu conspiracy started getting like some weight, but I remember reading all the patents of like that guy whose initials are like the first 2 letters of his first and last name spelled out Hulu, and it was a patent from maybe the 80s or 90s showing how the electromagnetic fields of a screen of a TV could then be used to entrain thought. And so the Hulu commercial was kind of playing upon that. And Alec Baldwin was an alien, very similar to the aliens which you see in The Simpsons, saying, this is our plot to take over the world.
Right. We're going to eat your brains.
We're going to eat your brains, and we're going to do all of that.
He wipes his face like he just had a delicious meal kind of thing, right?
Right.
So, and the other things that I remember them saying, okay, and again, I could have this wrong. I believe they were from the Midwest somewhere originally, or the East Coast. But I think they, at some point, were living in New Mexico. At some point, maybe when they discovered these things, or because I remember.
When you say they, who do you mean? The Baldwins?
Bonnie Mitchell.
Oh, the Mitchells.
Right, because I remember there being a segment of the interview where they talked about abduction, like alien interaction and abduction. And I felt like they talked about something related to New Mexico. And I can't remember if they were living there or if they had gone there as part of their research or something like that. And that's sort of what we're dealing with right now here. The other thing that was weird that I just remembered, and it's just another little synchronicity, but it's popping all over the place, is a girl that I did gymnastics with and that I was friends with. And that was like my main competition. Like we were on the same team, but like she would win one meet, I'd win one meet, right? That kind of thing, right? Her name was Heather Mitchell and her mom's name was Bonnie Mitchell. It's not the same Bonnie Mitchell, right? But there's that sort of connection that is, weird, right? I can't remember what her father's name was. I don't think it was John. But so that this thing is sprouting all sorts of legs for me. But Hulu, we're evil and we're proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
Hulu is a very weird thing because you pay for it, but you still have to watch commercials, like unless you pay for the really high level, right? If you just have like the basic package, like when you get Netflix, you don't have to watch commercials. With the Hulu, you still have to watch commercials, and they're really long commercials, right? So it's like weird that people are willing to do it, but I think the only reason people ever go to Hulu is because there's at certain times you can only get certain shows there, right?
Yeah. If my memory is correct, I want to say that Hulu, they have a connection with the Department of the Defense, with the American Armed Forces. Like it was like a service which was offered free to all, members of the service. Like somehow there was like a tie-in with that as well. Like I think that's like where they got like the money to really expand their network. I mean, the whole Hulu thing is strange. So I want to do like a quick little inventory right now of what we've talked about. We've talked about like the key points would be New Mexico. We're talking about the mnemonic circles. We're talking about the gardens. We're talking about all of that sort of stuff. But we're dealing with Baldwin. We're dealing with Hollywood. We're dealing with Epstein, and we're dealing with Clinton. I don't know off the top of my head of any sort of connections between Alec Baldwin and Jeffrey Epstein, but I definitely know that there's a strong connection between Baldwin and the Clintons, both Hillary and Bill Clinton. Like, both they are they speak the same message in terms of like, progressive value points, but then they're like friends. Like Bill Clinton was like the surprise guest at Alec Baldwin's Friars roast, like that sort of stuff. So where I'm going with that, though, what I also think is interesting. So, well, first, before I go into this next point, is we also know of Bill Clinton's very close connection to Jeffrey Epstein just through the logs on the airplane. So, I mean, it's you don't know if they're necessarily friends, but I think it's probably not a fair assumption. And then we also know, what came to light in the last year was the whole Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein thing as well. But I was also looking during our little intermission. We talked a little bit about the Alec Baldwin and Hillary Baldwin Foundation, and they ran into a bit of controversy a few years ago because the Baldwins used that foundation to purchase a stable which was adjacent to their property in the Hamptons on Long Island. And, there's some financial like questions, like whether they could have done that. And there's all these things like the Baldwins just didn't like the previous owners, how they ran it. So they purchased a whole bunch of controversy. But nonetheless, I got a point of reference for where they were in the Hamptons. And you go and you look at the Clintons, and the Clintons, they're famous vacationers. I don't think they're homeowners so much in the Hamptons, but where they stayed was 2 miles away from where the Baldwin property was. So again, like we're just seeing like, this overlap of the same people, similar places, similar viewpoints. I don't know. There's something there. I need to put a little bit more time into it, but it's certainly intriguing.
So yeah, this is not what we had really planned to talk about today.
We didn't plan to talk about anything.
Well, I had a plan to talk about.
Oh yeah. Okay. Do you want to move to what you want to talk about?
So, but in some ways, I'm wondering if maybe we can, revisit some of this New Mexico stuff with Dani next week in the glass bead game. And then my story, because it's in that same area that I'm talking about, is in Arizona, New Mexico. So let's wait. Let's do that all as part of that glass bead game next week, because she's going to be familiar with the areas that I'm talking about. And really focusing in on that area and what's actually really going on in those areas, because there's something afoot. So let's do this. In our pre-show, we talked about this Alec Baldwin thing, and we talked about Puppygate. And someone sent me something interesting about Puppygate while we were on our little, right before our little intermission here. So
Okay.
go over to the Patron segment. You guys can join us at patreon.com/offplanetmedia, emilymoyer.locals.com, projectkids.locals.com for the remaining content of this episode. And I think there's something kind of interesting to sort of dig into here and see what's going on. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds good to me.
All right, guys, join us on the other side for Synchromistic Puppygate on the other side. All right, guys.